That's hard work. Typically, we get snow and snow starts. Anywhere between 7 and 10, how fast you can do it. We get more than 6 inches of snow. Three lots.
Y'all want to take your seats and get this going so we can go out and enjoy the rest of the lake?
We'll talk again.
For your dining pleasure, we do not have bathrooms. So the idea is if we talk too long, you'll get itchy and want to go. Okay, I guess that was a call to order. We need to approve to amend or approve the agenda. You've all had it. Y'all have one, I hope. You had a chance to see it. Does anybody have anything to add or take away from the agenda? No? Okay, so all in favor?
I make a motion to approve.
Steve makes a motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Right.
I'm not. Okay, the mission statement. Steve Phelps can't be here, so I can do this. All right, the property owners of Eagle Lake, Essex County, New York, organize themselves as associates and their successors into an association September 13th, 1907 for the purposes and objectives set forth below. First, the protection of the mutual interests and properties of the members. Second, for the restocking of Eagle Lake from hatcheries. Third, for the regulation and control of the uniform water level of the lake. Fourth, the prevention of pollution of water in Eagle Lake. Fifth, the protection of spawning beds in Eagle Lake. And sixth, and for such other objects and purposes as may from time to time be determined upon by the members of the organization for protecting the mutual interest and property of the members. Can you all hear me back there?
Yes.
Good.
Did you read it again, Jack, please?
Did I do what?
I changed my mind.
Yes, you can read it again.
You know, you could be president. You are presidential material. Look at you. Look at you, Stephen. Okay, the board report. Last year, we all know what's going on. We did have a board meeting, and we basically just covered the general business. It isn't fair or right to do any kind of major business without the membership's vote. So we really just went through, and the money that we spent was the normal money we always spend, whether it was the donations for the fire department, the EMS, or for our C-slaps and things like that. A lot of just different things that we talked about that, just we've always done. So you didn't miss much. All right, now to prove the minutes from that meeting, Keith gets to tell us about it.
Well, I'd love to do that if my Dell comes back up.
Well, I may
Decided to update its firmware this
have it in
morning.
print.
If you got it in print,
don't
then
know.
I'm all set.
I did have it. Yes, maybe that's it. Is that the one? Is that what you
I
sent
should
me?
recognize it. Let's see, that's 8/24/19. So yeah, that's the year before.
Oh, the year before. See,
Yeah.
I did like the year before. All right, so I don't have it. All right, well, we'll get back to that unless somebody really wants to wait.
I'll let you know when the computer comes up.
All right. I've been told we don't need to talk about elections, that according to the ballots your board has passed, there was, 38 votes out of 40? So, nominations, we do know, right now, we have one board seat that's filled, and that's Dave Cerny. Zach has decided, due to a lot of different things going on in his life, that he will not seek re-election. So right now, we have 2 board seats open. According to the bylaws, we can continue running the business of the membership with what people we have. Anybody that's interested in getting on the board, you're more than welcome. Most of the communications is by email, and even I can do that, and that's a big deal. I'm not computer literate, nor do I want to be. So, but anybody that's interested, just talk to a board member, and we'll go from there. But right now, we just have one person on besides the executive board, and that's Dave. And as you see by Dave, he keeps us in line. Treasurer's report. Rolf Tiedemann.
I do have some paperwork for you so that you can see what we got. As I set my copy off to the side so I don't get it mixed up with. There are 2 sides to it, this year's budget as well as last year's budget. We are solid, which is the
Don't we have to pass
Outside of
around
the
a
whole
sign-up
thing?
list
Sign up for what?
for the members? Don't we usually pass around who was here?
Who is here? Yes, we do, yeah. We might be able to just,
Pardon?
might be able to just write it down, although I don't know all the names and faces.
You do?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So, yeah, we
That's what I
probably
was
should,
gonna- all
yeah, we probably should.
2021 is highlighted at the top, which is current year. We'll flip it over and start on the last year's side, just as a quick review. Both sides are basically going to be the same. About a third of the way across the page, from going from left to right, there is a line at the top that says line number. Directly below that are a couple numbers, 1 through 14. I'll direct you down towards the bottom part of the page where it says number 1, and that's the line that we really need to keep our sight on, which is the line that says checking account balance year end. Reading across there, you'll see $17,000 from last year, 15 the year prior, 13 the year prior to that, 11,000 the year prior to that.
We can start
So
with
our
you.
checking account balance every year is going up. We are solvent. We are bringing in more money than we're putting out, which is a good thing. To that extent, I have to say thank you to Zach for filling out the international paper grant for the last 2 years. That has made us that much more solvent. And I also have to say thank you to Bill Zito and Jim and Joy Schultz for allowing us to piggyback on their internet, which saves us about $600 a year so that we can still have our fix of what the lake looks like in the wintertime by the cameras. Without those sources of revenue, we would not be putting as much money in the bank as we are. If you want to look at the 2020 balance a little more, there's income at the top, there's disbursements midway down, but it basically comes up to the same thing. Flipping the page over, we go to 2021, which is this year, year ending. We are still once again solvent, down at that same line number 1. At this point, we're now looking at being at $19,000 in the bank. Most of that comes from our dues and the contributions made from members. Our dues and our unrestricted contributions, if you look up towards the top where it says receipts, line number 2, $13,000 from membership, 63 members out of approximately 90 pieces of property around the lake. Some of those are owned by multiple people, so we're about 60% of the people around the lake being members within the association. And they made due contributions of $1,300, so roughly the same amount of contributions as we get in dues. Expenditures coming down on line 4 there. We spent money on a donation to Chilson Fire Department, Thai Emergency Services, and AE Phelps Rescue, which is the Crown Point Fire Department, totaling $350. We had some water testing expenditures last year for CSLAP, which we've been doing the last few years. We did not do any fecal testing, which is in our in-house water testing. More details about what those tests are in a few minutes, only due to COVID and nobody being open for lab testing. And then we had expenditures for the newsletter and the like. On the topic of the newsletter, thank you for everybody that sends their dues in with the newsletter, the prepaid mailing address labels, and this year with the nominations for ballots. Works very smooth and takes a lot of responsibility off of doing it here at the meeting, and or we know who's coming and where we are prior to getting here. So that's kind of that. Going down the line, total checks spent was $1,200 out of our $3,000 that we brought in, and then it makes mention of donations paid direct by vendors, again, the Schultzes and Bill Zito for the cameras and that. So when we get down to the bottom, we again, like I say, at line 1, $19,000. Very bottom of the page, in grayed in area there, line 15 specifically, Crown Point still has money, your money, that was raised when we did the milfoil project back in 2000. They are still holding for us in excess of $34,000 that can be used for invasives and or any other project that the ELPOI votes on as being worthy for the lake and the management of it. At the moment, it's just accruing interest, a very small amount, but it is still there, and it is property owner's money. So, with that being said, questions about the budget that maybe did not get covered? Motion to approve the budget as presented. Motion presented by Liz Poppachuk, seconded, I guess, by Carolyn Baldwin. All in favor?
Aye.
Second thing that we need to approve is we make a donation every year to Chilson Volunteer Fire Department for use of the facility, plus just in general for allowing us to utilize their services, as well as A.E. Phelps, as well as the Thai Emergency. Need approval to fund that again at the last year's level of $200, $100 and $50, I believe it is here. Steve? Approve, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, this is on the web if anybody should ever want to see it.
I have a quick, I still haven't had my check cashed.
Because it's sitting in my back, no, it's sitting back. I just got them yesterday. They've been floating around in the mail for the last 15 days, 20 days since.
Okay, it's just in light of the post office.
You're having problems too?
I can confirm, I opened your envelope last night.
You are paid.
Carolyn's and Jerry's and.
I had my mortgage
Probably
payment
just
sent out
there,
3
yeah.
weeks early,
Oh,
and I had to go make another a cash payment because it didn't get across town.
yes.
Where's
You're
yours, is yours going to Texas? Cause that's where mine went, and it took them, they got it, I mailed it the 4th, they got it the 23rd, and they wanted to give me a fee, and I said, no, let's not do it. Anyways, now we'll talk, next on the list is adopt a highway and the a neighborhood watch. As most of you know, Tanya Condon did that for years, probably 20, and kept the highway. Right now, we have no one that is doing it. Tanya was our contact person. She went down to DOT, who gave her the bags and everything else. So since we have no one, unless someone wants to take up that, if bottom line, just clean up around your house. I know my wife did from my cabin all the way down past the antique store, Harris Point Way, and then back, and she was tickled pink. I think she got 35 cents in bottles. A lot of trash, but she goes, look at the money I see. Yeah, okay.
You gotta increase your allowance, check.
Oh. So anyway, so she did it. She got it. So if anybody's interested, talk
Next time I go
to.
by, I throw a 6-pack empties out for her.
Make sure you leave.
Tell you what you do. You drive by my house, you throw the full ones. I'll empty it. So, Zach, fish stocking.
Yes, so they were planned to stock 3,800 fish this year. They actually stocked 4,280 brown trout.
How many in your freezer?
I did keep 5 this year, but I caught more brown trout this year than I ever have. So normally after they stock, it's about 2 to 3 weeks where they're active on the surface. Probably 6 weeks this year. So, and I also did catch my largest brown on the fly this year at 23.5 inches, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Overall, the fish stocking, so the brown trout is exceptionally healthy. Last year, quite a large increase in number of crappie that have been caught throughout the lake. I caught a bunch of those myself. Still lots of pike, lots of bass, lots of rock bass. So everything seems to be healthy and going well. And I talked with Neil McCarthy, who does the fish stocking for us, and they're going to continue to stock every year. So
Are they have you heard any, are they gonna continue stocking and keeping things going the way they are, or?
They've been stocking them at a local hatchery here. I'm in contact every year with
Okay.
McCarthy, who kind of runs that region. And they're gonna continue to stock.
far as-
They'll,
okay.
they'll change the numbers every year. I think last year was like, I don't remember the number, like 3,600 or 38, somewhere
To
around
make
there.
up what you're taking?
But I don't take very many, but yeah, no, they're gonna continue with the stocking, and this year they gave us a surplus, which was nice. So,
Good. Also on a note, Zach has agreed to remain our contact person for the stocking, and thank you. And we'll go from there. Water quality and C-SLAP report, Rolf?
C-SLAP, Citizens Statewide Lake Assessment. Diane, myself, Keith Park, Chris Hyde, who was not here today and wishes he could be. By the way, he's recovering from his second COVID shot and had COVID earlier, and health has not been up and down a roller coaster along with work. So we go out once every 2 weeks and draw samples of water out of the lake. There is some pre-processing that takes place for things that can't be done at the lab or that need to be done immediately. The samples are then frozen and sent off to the lab. They do an analysis 8 times a year. At the end of the year, we get a report. The report doesn't give us a full profile of what's in the lake, but it gives us a very good profile of most of the analytical stuff that they need to assess that the lake quality is still reasonably good. We've been a member of C-SLAP now for the last 15 to 20 years or more. Every year the report comes back and says that the lake is still fit for all the things that we want to do with it, recreational purposes and the like. It does look a little bit at harmful algae blooms, if we should happen to notice anything. If you notice anything that looks kind of funky around your dock or something like that, where algae, let us know. We can take a sample of that and send it in. There is a filamentous algae that is in Eagle Lake that is not harmful, that I've sent some samples in the past. So just because you see an algae thing doesn't mean that it is always harmful. They do plant identification. If you see something that is out of the norm and you can't find a sample of it on our website under the archives and plant samples and that, we have fairly extensive photographs of the plants that are in our lake. If you can't identify it by that, again, let us know. Terrestrial plants, we can get some of those sent in through various locations. But by and large, C-SLAP is the vehicle that allows us to do sampling on the lake and have water quality samples done. In addition to that, we also do what is a fecal count. Basically, again, we go out and take a sample of the water, send it out, and it tells us what the fecal matter is in the lake. It can be from human sources, i.e. failing septic systems, or it could be from birds that have just gone by there, depending upon the time lag. You can't identify one from the other, but the bottom line is that once a year, right after Labor Day, in 4 sites or 5 sites, we go out, we take a sample. Steve Meyer's been out with me a couple times. Reach in the water up to your armpit and grab your sample down low, so that you get as little possibility of surface contamination. But every year it comes back non-detectable or levels just at the early entry level of points where we can count. What does that mean to us? It means that the lake is in good health. If we find changes, obviously we have to address that. One other thing that's going on, and I have a copy of it. I know the print is kind of small. I wasn't sure how many people would be here today. There is more information available through an organization called APRIM, Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program. We've been working with them since their inception back 30 years ago. They are the ones that are in the park that actually do the overall plant surveys and the like. What they put out just recently about gypsy moth and jumping worms. If you've come up through Lake George, you came in through Route 8, you may have known, going by Brant Lake, if you look, some of the trees look a little barren. Gypsy moth are eating like crazy. If anybody has never experienced gypsy moth, they are ugly. I experienced them when I was in high school. They eat leaves completely off. They poop like crazy. It's just, the webs are incredible. You can't walk through the woods. You gotta go like this to get through the woods. You're slipping and sliding on the mess. Trees do come back, some of them, but a lot of them are, once they get defoliated a couple, 3 times, then you get the moths that come out and they make a mess just as bad as the caterpillars do. The best thing you can do with the caterpillars is pick them off and kind of drown. You'll find them in the bark as they go up the tree in the morning. They fall down complete cycle. Jumping worms, I have no experience with them, but they do talk a little bit about them on APA there. They're a new kind of earthworm that is an invasive. I think of earthworms as being good. They're not necessarily the best in the world. There are lots of other invasives that are entering our park. Emerald Ash Borer, if you came in from the Vermont side of things, you come up through Addison County, you may have seen a lot of trees that don't look like they're gonna make it. They're dead. If you come in from the Syracuse way, you go through Cato, Meridian in that area, if you're not familiar with the north side of Syracuse, along the Nile Lake, everything there that's an ash tree is dead. How do you identify an ash tree? It's kind of got a like long skinny diamond pattern in the bark, pretty distinctive. They're not here yet, but they're pretty close, and when they're here, ash trees have a unique way of breaking up. My son has been in the tree business for the last 15, 20 years. Once a tree dies, he won't go near it. They become real brittle and they break in real strange ways. If you have an ash tree in your yard and it's live, hug it and enjoy it while it's alive, but once it dies, get it taken down. Because like I said, they do break in real strange ways. Don't park under it, don't sit under it, kind of deal. But if you want more information about invasives, APA is the place. There is probably at the top of the page their email address. You are welcome to send them an email. They'll add you to their listserv, and you can get all kinds of information. Or if you need to, you can contact them or contact me, and I can put you in touch with them. Jerry.
And they have these boat washing stations. Is that a requirement that boats be washed to go in the lakes or not?
The law was just re-upped this year. Yes, it is a requirement if you go from one lake to another that your boat be washed. If you are going in and out of the same lake, no problem, because what you take out, you will put back in, maybe, unless it dies in the interim since it's been out. But if you go from Eagle to some other lake, you are supposed to have it washed. And that not only, thanks for the question, not only for your boat, but your life jackets, your life preservers, your bathing suits. Anything that gets wet can harbor a species, be it good or bad, going from one lake to the other. And when I was working on the milfoil project 20-some odd years ago, everybody was like, oh, it's boats, it's powerboaters, it's powerboaters, it's powerboater. I got tired of hearing the rhetoric of the powerboater. It's also the person carrying the kayak. And I got even tired of saying that. It's the innocent kid, your grandson, your granddaughter, your son, your daughter. Mommy, can I take this pail of water with me to the next lake? Because I've got this fish or this rock that looks real pretty when it's wet. And we forget that we're going to take something with us to another body of water. That's why I say it's anything that comes out of one body of water goes in the next has the potential. Zach, great fisherman, takes his fishing rod, throws it out, pulls in a spiny water flea it's a little bigger than a ball of lint, if you will, when it's on a fishing line. Doesn't realize he takes it to the next lake, and now it's in the next lake. We all have to be vigilant. It's going to be us as individuals keeping those invasives from coming and joining us at our places where we like.
Along those lines, just real quick too, if you have people that are coming in and fishing and bringing bait, right? So if someone's bringing minnows, every single bait shop's supposed to give you a little slip that says where it comes from to verify, that the bait is coming from and is clean and not harboring anything. So if you do have somebody that brings bait, buys it, and then it gets specific to there, and then it's probably not. It might be fine, but it's not all.
With that, we just moved into old business, that was on the list, but there is a boat wash station right on 74. There's two on Scroon Lake, one at each end. My strong suggestion is if you take your boat from one lake to another, stop down there and get it washed. More so for the people that have guests, and you can blame me, I don't care, say it's my fault. You can't put your boat in the lake unless it goes through there. That protects your lake. Because once this thing gets polluted, we know what's going to happen to our property value. So, if you want to be nasty, I know you shouldn't say nasty, but if you want to be strong and you don't want to take the hit for it, tell them the president said, and he goes around checking. They don't know the difference. But if it gets it clean and it helps us to keep our lake clean a couple extra years or whatever, what do we care? We do care, but they're put out a little bit. Most of them got to drive right by it anyways. And the other problem that we have with our lake and some of the smaller lakes, there's nobody there to monitor the boats going in. And like Scroon Lake, you can't get in it unless you go through that station, the inspections, and the bigger lakes. Small ones like this, we're at the mercy of people doing the right thing, and let's hope they continue. So far, we've been fairly fortunate. Let's hope we keep it, but like I say, you can blame me. I don't mind. I get blamed for a lot of things.
If it's
Is
in,
there a charge at the boat launch?
Pardon?
Is there a charge at the boat launch when you go
Here?
through? Yeah.
No,
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 okay.
it's absolutely free. Your taxes paid for.
they will give you a ticket down there that says that your boat or your water equipment has been washed and cleaned, so that you can go to another lake where there may be somebody that it is indeed monitoring. If it's inconvenient for you or a guest to go, because they came out of Champlain or they came out of Lake George and they came up to 74 and there's no boat wash station, I believe the car wash in 74 was being used as a boat wash station, but it's not an official station per se. But for kids' play toys and those things that you don't want to necessarily go to a car wash or a wash station for, a little bit of Clorox bleach and hot water is reasonably effective. Leaving the equipment out in the sun for a couple of days, baking whatever's on there is also effective. Most of your microorganisms need moisture of some type to live in. Plant matter, which we didn't cover, milfoil, it's pretty visible when it's there. It's not like, a leaflet of milfoil that big around is going to be something that's necessarily going to grow in the lake, but it is something that you can see. It's the spiny water flea and any of the other zebra mussels and the like, quagga mussels, where the villagers are small enough, they're the size of a grain of salt and maybe a piece of rice, that you may not see them. But like I say, a little bit of bleach and water, scrubbing it down, washing it, leaving it out in the sun is probably as effective as you can be on your own. They're not doing much more than that at the wash stations. It's not like they've got some miracle solution that they're gonna spray on your boat. The place where they can't get on a wash station is inside the inboard motors, outboard motors, the water passages that are in there. They're still a vulnerable place for villagers and microorganisms to live, so we all kind of have to be vigilant about that. Last topic, if I can, milfoil. Last survey that I did was about 2 weeks ago. It is not doing overly well. Jerry sent me an article this fall or this summer from his daughter. In the past, there has been some reports about weevils and moths and the biological control of milfoil. We haven't any delay. To what extent it's there, we have not done any surveys or any studies since probably 15 years ago when Dr. Bob Johnson from Cornell University came up and looked at the lake, said, yes, you have a significant population of moths and weevils, and came up the following year to do a follow-up survey, couldn't find a one of them. So the bugs do well some years, they don't do well other years. The years that the bugs do well, the milfoil doesn't do as well because the bugs eat the milfoil. Right now, I think it's at the point, we can probably all agree that we're happy that the milfoil hasn't done what they said it was going to do back in the early 70s when it was first identified, which was to take over the entire lake. But at the same time, it's there. It's kind of got a natural balance as long as we realize where it is. Some years it will do better, some years it will do worse, and it kind of goes about the way that it is. If you see extensive amounts of it really lush and vibrant growing, let me know. Bugs probably aren't there, but kind of keep an eye on your own property. If you see it growing in front of your own property, pull the stuff out, take the roots and all, rake up what's there, keep the population down to a minimum.
On the note that Rolf talked about, you're allowed to, they call it hand harvest, I'll call it picking. Pick the milfoil around your place. Once you get it under control, it's not that bad. I still do it, and the kids will do it. It's almost like picking potatoes. You just get down in the sand and pull it out by the roots. Again, if you have a lot of milfoil, it's a lot of work right now, but if you keep up to it, it's like anything else. I just look at it as like, weeding your garden. If you get it out there, at least your place is going to be fairly well under control, and you can use it, and it might help to stop it from growing and getting worse. But you can pick, the APA still says you can, they like to use the word hand harvest.
You know what is doing well is
What's that?
the flower and rush is doing very well down in the cold, like near the beach,
Okay.
in different places up at the other end, down in front of people's houses.
Right in front of Floyd Sue's boathouse there. Okay.
In there, it's so easily, it's not. We did it by our house in that cold and it's so easy, I think that.
Yeah. Pete's talking about flower and rush. Another invasive of sorts, but not necessarily identified as a problematic invasive. It is in other parts of the,
You should see it up by
But,
where the Adirondack Well Center is. There's a lake on the way track, and one whole end is just covered in
it's a pretty purple flowers purple,
It's a beautiful plant.
it. Yeah.
but can be problematic in certain instances. When I reported it to the DEC, because Pete sent us some samples when we first found it in the lake. They're like, well, it is and it isn't, and it's this and it's that, and so it's not, it is one that we probably should be much more concerned about if it has a chance to get going, because you're saying there's a lot more than I've seen in.
Moving on again with old business, I'm sorry.
No, I'm with it.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of put the dam and the lake level all in together. The lake level right now, I understand is about 3. Normally, we try to keep it, according to the state, at a ±2. And some days you win, some days you lose. The beavers are very active. Right now, they have built their dam again on top of our dam, but their dam is only as high as our dam, so we really don't need our dam. So I'm leaving them alone. If you've gone down there, there's 2 piles of debris that myself, Dave Cerny, Zach, Rolf, Steve, a bunch of have gone down. One pile is over 6 feet tall. I've contacted DEC a couple times. They'll get to it to remove it.
They were out early this week.
The beaver?
Yeah, no, the DEC, and they spent 5 hours removing stuff from the.
Did they?
They told me that, I didn't go
Oh, I
look,
haven't had.
check on them. but-
Okay, all right, good. I talked to, a couple weeks ago, some girls were paddling by in a boat that said DEC, and I talked to them, and they were counting boats on the lake, and I told them to
Yeah.
go back, so they apparently did. Keith has been in touch with DEC, and I did get a note back from them, or emailed me, that they'll get to it. As for the beaver, trapping beaver is expensive and hard, and a lot of people don't do it anymore. The beaver pelt itself is worth about $7. So to go out, you have to check your trap, I think it's every 24 or 48 hours. There's a lot to it. There's not a lot of trappers. Our trapper, we finally caught up to him, and unfortunately, the day I talked to him was the day he buried his mother. Of all days, I've been trying to catch this guy for months, and I finally catch him walking into his house, and hey, and here my wife saw it in the paper the next day, and bad time. Anyways, he said he's not gonna do it anymore, and so he's done. Talked to Trapper Jim on 74, he's 83 years old, he doesn't want to do it anymore, he's just doing a few more. I talked to another guy, I got a few more people. I just talked to the highway superintendent for Ty this week. They're looking for a beaver trapper because the beaver are plugging up the culverts. He gave me a name of 2 people, one of them was our old trapper, so I might get him. I got another guy, somebody who's gonna look into in Crown Point. So right now, if the beaver don't make the dam any higher and the water doesn't get any higher, I'm gonna leave them alone, and I won't worry about it till spring or till the water goes up. And even at that point, even DEC wrote me a letter saying finding trappers are very difficult, so they're acknowledging the same thing. There's just not a lot of money in it until the pelts go up and makes it a little more worthwhile. So, that's where we are with the trapper and the beavers. We did the boat wash station. Keith, speed signs, you usually take care of that, but
Yeah, I've been in discussions with the town supervisor, and he's currently looking into funding sources, grants, to do a sign that actually, we're looking hopefully to get 3 signs along the Eagle Lake area, one at the causeway somewhere in the middle, and down at this end of the lake. There's one on, I think, you mentioned Baldwin Road or something he did over in Ty, that he's been through the whole process with, so he's just currently trying to find a funding source right now for us, and once that's done, he supports the idea in our putting the signs there, and getting that set up. We may have some funds that we could match with him. We gotta see what he comes up with, and then it will be discussed as far as, the cost and so forth, and how many that they're willing to do, and how many that we want to have done, and so forth. But hopefully sometime over this summer, he can find a source of funding. But I keep up with him to keep it in his mind, that we do want to keep this, process going. They've been good this year. The radar sign's been down there since before Memorial Day, and it's still out now. The state police have put one down on the straight stretch by the post office as you get off the Northway down there. So we've got some coverage anyway, but hopefully within the next year or so, hopefully this year, we get some funding together, and then it sounded like the sighting of the signs would be the only issue that would be discussed. They would be solar signs. They got to be in areas where it gets a decent amount of sunshine for charging the batteries during the day, and then it wouldn't be any big deal to get them installed.
So
It's in process.
Would they, you probably don't know, I was thinking, is it the signs that are the mobile signs, or were you talking a permanent?
These would be a permanent installation. Again, I haven't been down to look at the ones that he put in Ticonderoga. He sent me a picture, but they're not mobile signs anymore.
So then they would be
They're
the,
permanent solar, so they're not hooked to the power grid. There's no issues with that. There may eventually be issues with maintenance. That hasn't been discussed yet. Batteries don't last forever, but that'll be something that I talk with them about.
yeah, well, that's where I was.
They will be basically what you see down here, so yeah. It'll be the same idea anyway. It'll just be mounted on a post that have some solar panels on it.
Keith, do you know if you're going for anything that has the ability to record so that we can make a case for how much elevated speed people are experiencing and exactly when, whether it's holiday weekends? The recording aspect of it is great, because then if we really want to challenge the speed limit setting for the protection of, people in their driveways, et cetera, not to mention to reduce accidents, we'll have the ability to record.
Yeah,
So we
I'll
can
have to
use
find
it.
out more about that. I did not discuss that aspect of them. Good many of them have data loggers, so that might be a good idea, because in what few speed surveys have been done along here by the state and the state police, it didn't take them long to find out that there is a speeding issue. So, yeah, that'll be a good idea.
On that same note, the state police, they were just last week sitting at the antique store, and when we talked to them, he says, how's business? He says, they gotta be flashing the lights, there ain't nobody speeding, I haven't seen anybody. Yeah, I figured, but then a little while later, I heard him take off, and he stepped on it, so he got somebody, but yeah. But the state police, I haven't seen Thai police much, I mean, they're a small department, state police have been out here and there, so for us, and that's the other part we've said at many meetings, if they're going to look for speeders, we can be caught too, so.
Last time I left out of here, I went through Scruton, and one of the state police officers was filling his patrol car up at the Sunoco station area. Walked over and talked to him and says, hey, with the holiday weekend coming up, if you'd like to sit along 74, I'm sure some of the residents there would more than let you, welcome you to sit in their driveway and enforce the speed. Along that same line, if you are speeding and you get stopped, it's your own fault, obviously. And I mentioned that to him, and he kind of chuckled. But the other thing is, if you see the state police along 74, if you have an opportunity to see them, even if it's not along 74, please invite them to stop. If speeding is an issue for you, invite them to help out and help in any way you can, as far as letting them park in your driveway or something like that. They can't necessarily just pull in your driveway and sit there without permission to be able to do so. Same thing with the Thai police. My brother-in-law had an issue last year with the Thai police that some of you may have heard of through the grapevine about. But the Thai police were an absolute great group of people to work with. They have been for decades. I've worked with them on and off for years. If you're in Thai, stop in, see the supervisor, let them know that you appreciate the services that you do get from them. Remind them that we are a small lake association. Remind them that we are interested in speed signs along Route 74. The politicians in this town are very easy to work with. They put their shoes on the same way you and I do. I know a lot of people go, oh, I don't know if I can approach those people. They are very, very much approachable. They are very interested in what we think about what's going on in the community. They are more than willing to help us
in any way, shape that we can. And if we don't keep our issues in front of them, they kind of go by the wayside and somebody else, gets their attention. So let Joe Giordano know what you want to happen in your community.
Anything else under old business? Anybody think of anything that we've missed or I've missed? We'll move to new business.
Jack, one more thing.
I'm sorry?
With radar speed signs, from a treasurer standpoint, we do have matching funds. That's part of what the money is there for. And I've indicated to Joe Giordano and some other things, that we are gonna hold our money and use it as matching funds as opposed to just going, oh, let's pay off, kind of deal. Let the town come up with some money. The same thing holds true with the beaver. We do have money budgeted within our account to deal with beaver. If it's a $50 pelt or if it's a $300 beaver, we do need to keep the lake level at bay so that we don't wind up property damage, which costs us more.
Again, I'm sorry I didn't mention, again, going back to the beaver. If you wanna call professionals, the guys that do this, that's their livelihood. The closest one, I believe, Chris Hyde talked to was Rolf. It was $100 for him to come up here and check the traps. That wasn't even to get the beaver, just to check the trap. And again, at looking at it, that's an hour of his time, and we all know, this is how you make your money. You don't wanna be on the road for a couple hours and, oh, the trap's empty and go home. Gas, everything's expensive. So if we do go to a professional like that, the bill is gonna be quite high. I'm hoping to get someone local. I did offer our last trapper, X amount of dollars just to go check them, X amount of dollars for each beaver, and I told him we want just proof that the beaver came from Eagle Lake and not someplace else. So I can see that the cost is gonna go up because nobody wants to drive and get there for nothing. So just when it does come about, don't be too surprised. Just think that each time they go, and they're regulated by the state law, I'd have to check, I think it's every 40, the maximum's 48 hours, the minimum maybe 24 that they have to check the trap. So, going up and down the road, even if it's 45 minutes, there's an hour and a half of your day gone. So we all know what that's like.
As a request also, if any of you are interested in trapping, or if you know somebody in the local community that is, or you have, somebody that you know that performs trapping services, please. We need your input.
Okay, anything else, I'm sorry, about old business? I think we covered it.
Old business, do you want me to read the 2020 board meeting report?
You found it?
Got it. Back up and running.
Okay.
Seem to have managed to update its firmware and not blow up, so. Okay. July 11th, 2020, we had the virtual Upward board meeting in lieu of the regular meeting because of COVID. Called to order at 10:10 a.m. exactly this year. Motion by Steve Myers to approve the 2019 board meeting notes, seconded approved. Treasurer's report. Rolf Tiedemann read the treasurer's report. Healthway solvent. Amounts of account discussed. Line by line discussion as this year. Membership numbers discussed. Donations returned to levels 2 years ago. Motion approved. Motion to approve. All in favor? Passed. Motion to continue bank and Ticonderoga as Healthway Bank. Approved. Both pass sheet around for signatures for that. Election of officers for mail. Officers reelected, and Rolf talked about vote numbers, etc. Updated info on years of service. The board members, it's on the website, discussed reelections for that year for officers and Chris Hyde on the board. Thanks to Steve Phelps for the newsletter of that year. Will he do it again next year? He did this year. Send thank you note to the Philly family for their donation. Jack mentioned checks to donations will be sent out by him. Rolf mentioned that Tilson Fire Chief resigned and a new one will be appointed next month. Discussion about filing tax form, which Rolf will take care of. There's nothing in yet, not due until end of the year. Jack thanked Joe at International Paper for the grant that year. Jack spoke about continuing newsletter with prepaid postage as we have. Rolf spoke details and we continue as done. website and info on the web. Jack spoke of information that would be allowed on the web and what the board did not want liability for on the web. One member's inquiry was discussed. Rolf spoke details of information sharing and responsibility that he didn't want to be that person responsible. Invasives, Jack mentioned invasives, past work, future road ahead. APA's position, renovate herbicide, approved by New York State, but not the APA. Rolf mentioned Lake George using a herbicide, discussion about this year's milfoil, supposed to be less than previous years. Rolf discussed the invasives that are working their way in toward the lake. Jack spoke of other issues, including Bob Stegman, contacting Bob Stegman. Causeway project update that I gave last year, and the request for speed signs and the dry hydrant to follow up with that. In an additional note to that, the state does not want to put speed signs as part of that project. They won't do that. They do not really want to put a dry hydrant down there. That's still somewhat up in the air. We're still discussing that, so the fire department can use. Might be able to be done in light of the water situation. Various discussions about what height increase might be possible. More discussion of radar signs, dry hydrants, and items near the grant. Walmart possibly find some of this for funding the radar signs. Also, the foil speed surveys that I obtained, and most traffic is going well over the speed limit. Jack brought up boat launch and beach issues, contacted Bob Stegman. Adopt the highway, Jack brought up the need for a volunteer for adopt the highway and need for a little camp around the home property that's issued. At least until a volunteer steps forward, specifics, bag obtaining and deposit besides he had all the information and pass it along if anybody is interested. Beavers and the VSA, Jack discussed beaver dam activity, attempts to contact the trapper, and what has been done involving the DEC for debris removal. Dam and beaver activity discussed on the lake. They were still around. VSA on the website covers our beavers control. Make sure Rolf has copies of VSA for inclusion on the website so that we are all covered if we are down there removing debris from the dam. And you can't just happen to go down and remove debris from the dam if you want to. You have to have a signed VSA for that. Rolf discussed water testing, motion for collective vehicle testing, delivery of the bottles is approved. C-SLAP is progressing. Outgoing meetings. Jack requested the date of 2021 for the membership meeting to do July 3rd or 10th, and we know what date that is now. And a barbecue, which we won't have this year, after the COVID issues by them. And there are discussion about having a board meeting in September and the need for such. We'll discuss liability of need, follow up on things that said done by the board or officers. Rolf spoke of documentation, lake use, and proper documentation of such. Rolf also spoke of CSAP protocol for counting boats on the lake, which the DEC seems to be doing. Rolf spoke of ownership of what we want done on the lake and documentation of such. Fish stocking, Zach mentioned 3380 brown trout for the year 2020, and they were put in on March 25th. Miscellaneous items, Steve spoke of insurance liability and presentation of such. Rolf led a discussion of how to regulate lake level, understanding what the lake level will be with X number of boards installed, barring acts of God, and need to document this. General discussion of getting information out to members about various issues. While there is no general membership meeting, need a volunteer, perhaps discuss with Steve Phelps about sending out a page or two. We're there to keep everybody in the loop. Dave talk to Steve concerning this. Motion by Steve Meyer to adjourn, seconded by Dave Cerny. All in favor, adjourned at 12:33 p.m. on 7/11/20.
Almost sounds like a repeat of what we just talked about.
It seemed to be deja vu all over again.
Okay.
Motion to accept the minutes as read. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, we're going to new business. Do you want to jump right into the bridge thing now?
I might as well.
Might as well.
I'm in pretty regular contact with Mercy at the state DOT. She's the current project manager for that. The project has been delayed like most things. It has had a new contractor selected, and they are to submit plans by, it was supposed to be May, now it's the end of July. To make a long story short, it doesn't sound like anything is really changing as far as the fact that they're going to replace something. What they're going to replace our bridge with is something very similar. It might be a little bit wider, might be a little taller, but really not much if any, because they don't want to reconstruct the whole causeway, and there's logistics issues there. If you make it taller, Forest Lyle's going to be looking on his driveway. It's also a lot of work, slowing it up and down. There are issues with disturbing the lake if they make it wider, so it sounds like we're going to get something very similar to what's there, although it will be classified as a bridge, not a culvert, as it's currently classified as. The only difference that I saw is that they originally wanted to build a temporary road around the bridge so that we could get around it while they were working on it. Well, you can imagine that the DHC loves that idea. So currently they're looking at what the problems would be if they simply closed Route 74 down for a weekend and did all of the major work as far as placing the prefabricated bridge in place in one weekend and being done with that. So last I heard that was the plan, but it isn't concrete yet anyway. So we'll see what happens there. But any more information that I get, I'll pass along, and everybody, our Facebook page and such. Construction won't start till at least next summer. So nothing's going to happen this year. If you see somebody in there, they're just taking measurements and whatnot.
We're usually talking this fall, correct? So it's now, you're saying next summer?
Yes, next summer before any construction starts. So I'll keep everybody informed, and if there's any major changes, we're thinking about it.
We have some new neighbors. I know two of them have told me that they have joined the association. Tim and Ellen McNeely, they bought the gray house, used to be Donnelly's, and then Schultz bought it. It's right down in Ty Bay. They're from Pennsylvania. They have been camping at Paradox Lake with their whole family, all cousins and everything, for the last 20 some odd years. So he did tell me that he joined. He probably is in the thing. Bill and Kim Clifton, they bought Bill and Tracy's place on the hill across from my house. They have their little dock right next to mine, and they're from Greenwich, and they have older children. They seem pretty nice. The ones I don't know about is Chris and Crystal DeRocco. They bought Andy Belkovic's house. It's the green house that sits across from Pat Chamberlain's house, which is now owned by the Clarks. They're from Niskayuna. He does web stuff for one of the banks, like a security thing down that way. I forget, my wife talked to him. I don't know if they've joined yet, but they did give, to go on, we did hand each of them a welcome packet, which consists of a welcome letter, thanks for coming to the neighborhood, the first page of our website so they can get into the web and see what's going on, a brief map of the lake, and maybe there was one other sheet of paper, just so that, it's like anything else, just to make them feel welcome. Two of them told me they were going to be here, but with this weather, they probably obviously changed their mind. But anyways, if you know of anybody else, I don't see the people down at the other end of the lake, Cerny's and much that area as often. So if anybody new moves in there, let us know. We can give them a welcome packet. And when you do, if you do talk to them, if you explain what this membership is about, it's not like a homeowners association where we dictate the color of your house, things like that. We're only here to protect the lake. And it's in all of our best interests, as Rolf will tell you. When we talk to government officials and we say we represent 25% percent of the lake, they really don't listen, but when we represent 75 or 100%, then they listen. So it's incumbent of us to make sure that these people join. I mean, it's $25 or $20, it's not that much. You know, so it's incumbent to get them on board, just so we can have a little bit of arm twisting with our politicians. Because they're all looking for votes. So, you know, that's the reality. So,
Hey Jackson, there's another couple that bought, just east of Dave's place, on the opposite side, coming from Vermont, I believe Dave and Sarah just bought that place, kind of on the hill there. If there's someone else, you actually see the houses.
up on the rock. Yeah, she's the assessor, right?
No,
Well,
let's say that that's,
yeah, they were the assessor.
They were nobody else.
Yes, they sold, to a couple from Vermont.
Oh,
Other than meeting them and saying hi, I mean, they've been friendly. And then additionally, the Silly's property was up for sale, and they've already got an offer in the first week. That's currently pending right now, so.
I don't get down there, I didn't know that. So, but again, we can get them involved. Again, get to know them. I was hoping they would be here to introduce and have a faces. Oh yeah, now I know you. Especially, we all look at the lake. The people in the kayaks and canoes, we don't know if they live here or not. The ones with the big boats, we know. They belong on the lake. You can't get a big boat on the lake, really, so.
Clarence's Waters Place is, according to the sign, it's got a sold sign on it. I think the property next to yours or next to Becker's may have a offer pending on it.
No,
Or-
it's Silly's place.
Okay. We try as best as possible through the database to keep track of new owners on the lake, and we've been pretty good in reaching out to those people. When my daughter put the database together, she brought in the tax record number for each of the individual properties, which does not change when ownership changes. The official tax roll number stays the same, so when a property sells, we can go through very quickly and see the new name and address on that piece of property, and reach out to those people with our newsletter and say, hey, here's the newsletter at a minimum. With the mailing that we did for the newsletter this year, we got two mailings back from people that I was kind of surprised that we got returns on their mailing, because they've been longtime residents up here. But I do have phone numbers for them, and I will reach out to make sure that we get good addresses. Whether they moved or something like that, who knows, but as far as I know, they're still owners of the property.
I'll pass on to you. I got a phone call. My wife got it, passed it up here from this guy named John. You know where your place is. Y'all know where Cole's house is? All right, so picture his house and head back towards Cerny's, and there's this house it's dilapidated. It sits up on top of the hill. It's got a well house down by the road and then steps to the lake. He called me.
Is that Blanchard?
Oh, John Waters.
Oh, John
Waters,
Waters.
John Waters, yes. He hasn't been up here in 10 years, and he was asking about the water situation, so I'll have to pass that on to you, his name, his number, but, you know, you can tell by his voice, he's elderly.
He lives in Clifton Park, just down the street from, or not Clifton, Clifton Park area, just down the street
Yeah.
from Chris Hyde. And Chris Hyde has actually had a visitation from him on numerous occasions. In the past, he's come to us and donated. And how he comes across them, I don't know, but the silverware and napkin and salt and pepper packets from like a Wendy's or a Burger King or something like that, he's given us numerous ones of those. His dad was kind of an interesting character. He was kind of known as the Baron of the Lake, and went out and did a patrol every day around the lake. Real good guy, but as Jack mentioned, the son didn't really want the place in the first place. It's been in his name since his dad passed away, probably, I guess, 20 years ago. The house was during one of the hurricanes, either Floyd or Irene or whatever it was. The tree came down and kind of knocked it and pushed it off its supports. It's truly just it is a cottage sitting up on a bunch of concrete piers, as many of us are, and it's now up for sale, and it's been for sale for quite some time. So what status it's in, I don't know, but I know there's been a couple people made some inquiries, and
Bill and Kim, who bought the place across from me, said they looked at it, and he's a contractor, I have the equipment, this place needs a lot of work, because it hasn't been done. So,
Straight across.
You know where the dilapidated boathouses?
yeah,
Just east
Pete
of
Stone's
that,
place,
on the hill.
the boathouse that's got the kegs on the porch,
Brown and tucked up.
across the street to the left or right of that. There's a White House on the other side of that that's now for sale also that I haven't seen occupied for many years.
There's a bunch of sold signs right on the way.
Yeah.
when I came.
And if anybody's interested in the character of the house that the tax assessor bought, that is now owned by, as Zach mentioned, somebody from Vermont, the tax assessor still has the right to use the property in front for their boat or whatever the arrangements are. But that place also needs significant amounts of work. I walked up around it one day. Your living room floor, your living room floor is no better than what you're sitting on here right now. There is nothing left of the floor. It's literally become one with the dirt. And you could sit around and have a campfire in your living room on the dirt. It was, yeah.
Put a roof
Right,
on it,
now-
I know.
That's great.
If somebody's working on it, they got a lot of work ahead of them. A lot of work.
Moving on, we have to, Steve Phelps, unfortunately, has decided that he will no longer be the editor of our newsletter. He will continue the Facebook page, so we'll be looking for someone to pick up the slack on that. Otherwise, your newsletter, unless you really know how to do it, is gonna be probably something like this. I am not a computer person, I'm not a good letter writer, but Steve did an excellent job for many, many years. I wish he was here so I'll have to stop down and thank him personally. But he's just gotten a lot of business and a lot
Yeah,
of
he's
work.
very involved with the fire department grants and writing their.
Yeah, and if any of you ever try to write a grant, it's a daunting proposition. And if he's working on grants, and they get thrown out for just any little thing. So, but I wanted to mention that, Steve won't be here, won't be doing that any longer. And then, last unless you have something on new business, would be the water issue. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to, going back to CSLAP, and you, I'm concerned in CSLAP, we fill out data, and it's based on our observations about conditions of the lake, et cetera. They added a new question this year, which ties into the DEC and the boat count, which bothers me. The question is, in our opinion, did you observe too many boaters, kayakers, et cetera? We have received no frame of reference for what they mean by that. A boat count, an activity, there was no training, everything else we received training for. It is a blank leading question. And my opinion about whether there's too many kayakers, because I might not want to boat around them, and that's not my opinion, could be an answer that's given. And there is a correspondence to the time of day, they do have the date and time, but CSLAP receives its funding from DEC. DEC, as part of their plan overall in the future of our boat launch and some of their future programs, they want to know how many boats we actually own as individuals on this lake. Part of their boat count was to go to each of the properties they had proposed and do a count of how many boats you actually own. And I don't know how they're tying that into potentially how many boaters can actually come in and visit and use the lake. So I'm concerned, and we, in our second sample that went back, our sample collection went back to CSLAP, I've asked for our dialogue on that particular question. Because first of all, I want to make sure I'm representing the answer correctly, that we know what we're doing, and I also want to know what they're doing with it. You mentioned that you saw a DEC officer on the lake, or at least I heard through Rolf that you had, and they were doing the boat count. Can you elaborate on what they shared, or?
They were this is what irritates me. I'm glad I wanted to bring up the boat too, don't let me forget it. They usually, we've always had a very good rapport. You know, hi, how are you, what's going on, and shoot the breeze. They've been very open. These girls, hi, how are you? Because I went out, I heard thunder, so I went to the front to look at the lake, and there they were, and they were just there, and I just happened to see these faded letters in this canoe that said NYSDEC. So I said, you with DEC? And they said, yes. They were regular civilian clothes. I think they're probably college students hired to do the survey. So I asked them, what are you looking for? They're doing a boat count. That's all. They didn't want it. And so I asked them, one of them, Corey McGee, who was in charge of this area, I asked one of them, are you Corey? Because we communicate, but I've never seen him. And they said, no, that was her, that was their supervisor. but they wanted out. I was very surprised, but boat count and that was it. So, and that raises a lot of questions of secrecy. Which I don't care for it. This is supposed to be an open government. Yeah, it was very, they just passed the message on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the DEC is looking at the capacity per acre, surface acre of water, as to how many boats they think should be able to be out and operating.
There is, well, you know, in here, C-SLAP has a whole section on how many boats. And one of the things, just for your information, is you think about water skiing. They have it figured out if for each water skier, how many acres that boat needs to water ski compared to how many acres the canoe, the kayak, etc. Our lake is 416, 20 some odd acres.
420.
For what?
420.
420. So if you take their numbers, there may be more boats than what it can handle. But as we know, how many boats have you seen on that lake? The biggest time I've seen 9, and that was like July 4th weekend. 1 or 2. So if we have, let's say, we could have 1,000 boats on this lake. Doesn't mean they're all out there right now. So this is what Diana's alluding to. We got to be careful of and say, oh, you got too many boats. Well, define too many. Now, when they came around, my boat wasn't in yet. Mine was still in the garage. So they didn't give an accurate count. And just because the boat is at the dock doesn't mean it's not a visitor. You know, it could be somebody that's there for the weekend and take their boat out. So we have to be very diligent in making sure, because they're going to get the information. They hear what they want to hear, and that's the unfortunate part. DEC used to be very, very, you could talk to them and make sense. They've gotten, I don't know what it is, they've gotten a little bit away from that, and it's almost this way or the highway. And as for the boat launch, as most of you know, they have proposed to put a barrier at our boat launch, and technically it's not a boat launch, it's a fishing access. Any of you who have been here for years, look through your pictures and see if you can find that sign. It used to say boat launch. We're trying to get a date of when that was changed and why. We're trying to get some more information on, their idea is the bar across the boat launch will stop trailer boats. Any boat that comes in will have to be lifted over the bar. Their reasoning is it will stop the invasives. Well, again, think about it. If that's true, if the invasives are all around the boat launch, wouldn't that be where all the invasives are concentrated? But yet they're all over the lake. So that's just a ploy to make everybody feel good, like they're doing something. That's not the problem. So I wrote Bob Stegman. Unfortunately, I believe the letter that I wrote to him was when he was retiring, and I never heard. I've been in contact, wrote a couple letters to the new Region 5 director, and I have not heard anything. I'm going to call him, won't be this week, but next week. So, okay, what's going on? This is my concern. Corey McGee is in charge of this area from what we understand. When this whole thing started, Corey McGee was in contact with Rolf, Pete, and Chris Hine. She knew they were all Eagle Lake and never said one word about what was coming down. Nothing. We saw the notice in November for a public meeting in North Hudson about Frontier Town. Said nothing else. Most of us didn't pay attention to it. In that meeting that never happened, was the Hammond Pond Unit Program, Plan, which Eagle Lake is in. And I believe Rolf was the one that caught most of it. Page 80 identifies Eagle Lake, and that's when they talked about the boat launch and the campground. Campground, I want to change that too. If this is so, why didn't you say anything? Now, to bring fast forward, I emailed Corey to ask about the beaver and get rid of the debris. She tells him that she has some paperwork about this, because apparently the Region 5 director I've been writing to must have got one of the letters and talked to her. Apparently, this is all guesswork on my part, because she tells him he has information. I emailed her a couple days later about the beaver debris. Never once did she mention anything about the information she's supposed to have. And I put on it my name, president. It's not like, I don't know what's going on. I'm still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Well, I am talking to other people. Wouldn't you think, oh, he emailed me. I got information, I should forward it to him. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, the people show up counting boats. So, I'm kind of not very trusting anymore, okay? About the best way I can be. If you want to do something, I'd be up front and do it. And like I said, it won't be this week because I've got other things going on. So,
In addition, I talked with Corey briefly on the phone a couple of weeks ago when I followed up with our VSA paperwork for what we did with the dams the past year. And I asked her about what the vote count was. She really didn't want to talk about it. She mentioned, oh yeah, we're doing a survey to find out. They won't elaborate. You really have to pointedly ask them certain questions and, get your questions, think about them for a week ahead of time, write them all down, so when you get on the phone with them, you got it right in your head, that, you have to dig the information out. They're not gonna just, in the discussions that I've had, volunteer it. Jack mentioned, it takes some work, and you kinda gotta dig out of them, they're really up to it. And keep at them.
well, and
Keep
that's,
calm, keep pestering, because Paul spent most of one winter dealing with all of this, and we wouldn't have a boat launch
No,
now
no,
if he hadn't done that.
if it wasn't for
And
that, yeah.
Pester, and that's the only way to get anything done.
But that and the big thing scares me of my government. If you're hiding something this little, what else are you hiding? And that brings on a whole other issue, which we're not going to get into. But, they're blindsiding us on a lot of things. I mean, things that they should have come up and say, hey, we're going to, if it's that great, then you should be able to tell people, the truth comes out. And if you really need to do something, explain to us why, not just do it and say, there you go. So,
Jack, if I can, real quickly, the deal with the barrier at the boat launch, and as Jack is saying, with government, when the park agency came to be back in '72, they made decisions as to what lakes would be afforded the boat launch and what lakes would not be afforded the boat launch based upon size. The issue that we're dealing with right now was actually put into law back in '72 when the park agency first came to be, as far as whether we would or would not have a boat launch. And it was lakes under 1,000 acres would not be afforded a boat launch, they would be afforded a fishing access point. And they're just getting around to quote unquote putting that into place at this point. Why they've ignored Eagle Lake and one or two other lakes within the entire park over the last 50 some odd years is unbeknownst to us. But that's kind of when Keith was mentioning, I spent a good amount of one winter back and forth between DEC and the like, trying to figure out how we got ourselves into the position where this Hammond Pond unit management plan came to be, and was like, oh, this is something brand new. It's not something brand new. It was something that was put, like I say, put into place a number of years ago, and it's just coming to be now. The same thing if those of you that like to hike and are finding it difficult to get up to the High Peaks area and wanting to park your car and finding that you need to have a permit now to get onto the trails. The laws for that were passed some 15 years ago, and it's just now that they're going, oh, let's dust this paperwork off. So just be aware of what is being presented to our legislature now that may not affect us, but may come back around and bite us in the backside 10 years from now when they say, oh yeah, we'll put that in place. For those of you that are closer to the Capitol than I am in Rochester, you hear a lot more about laws that govern what happens in the park. By all means, if something comes up and you see a newspaper article, clip it out, send me a copy of it, send me a link to it. Send us, as the association, a link as far as what they're trying to do within the park. It's things that we need to keep track of as individuals as well as a collective group, so that they don't put greater strangleholds on our freedoms of what we want to do or what we need to do on the lake.
On that note, Dan Stack, who a lot of people have been spelling his name wrong, he took Betty Little's place as state senator, lives in Queensburg, right next to Paul, and his name is S-T-E-C, there is no K.
There is a guy with a K in his name.
Pardon?
There actually is a guy, S-T-E-C-K, and it's not even all.
Oh, okay, well, Dan is just, I've seen it a couple times, and it's just, as long as we don't write them and say, put the K in there, because, you know, I'm thinking like, the point that he's a very avid Adirondacker, he's, I think he's got the 46 or close to it. He's always, talking about, well, him and a good friend of ours just went taking pictures on Lake George of the sunrise and eagles. So he's in the park, and that's the most important thing. He has contact with the mountains and hiking, and so when we talk to him or you talk to him, he understands what you're talking about. I know he did send us a thing about back with COVID and trying to get the shots. His parents are elderly, and he was upset at the difficult time his parents were having. So he had a first-hand view of how hard it was. So he's got, at his age, we're lucky that he is involved and can, you know, figure out what we're talking about. So he's not one of these that has nothing to do with the mountains and sits in the office. He's out there. So you may even run into him if you're hiking or something on a boat. So he's aware. Now how much he can do is another thing, but at least he's in the park and hiking and doing things, and he sees the results of some of the stupidity that they do come up with.
Piggyback on that, when we were going through and they were looking at closing the boat launch and changing the beach arrangements, I reached out to his legislative aide, as well as Betty Little's legislative aide, as well as Betty Little, because I knew Betty from face-to-face conversations I had with her many years. I did not know Dan Stack at all, did not know his legislative aide. But his legislative aide is absolutely a fantastic person to work with, took a great amount of time with me, great amount of interest in what was happening. And based upon my conversations with his office and Betty Little's office and Bob Stegman and ultimately the APA, it's the only reason the boat launch is still what it is, open to business. So if you do get an opportunity to see Dan Stack, or anybody runs across Betty Little and gets an opportunity to say thank you, they are the people that saved our boat launch as what it is.
And Debbie, who is Dan's legislative aide, did move from the Assembly to the Senate with Dan, so.
Dan Stack moved basically into Betty Little's office and
Yeah.
kept all of her executive staff as well as what the
So-
others were told.
And we'll move on to water. The new business is the water issue on Route 74, which also ties into the grid. I wish I could give you some definitive answers. You were at the meeting. Did you walk away with definitive answers? Nope. What they're proposing, and I'm thinking is, I guess, stage 3, which was the least expensive. We're going to put a 60,000 gallon water tank down here on Chilson at the divide. We're going to fill that with water from the street road well. and most of you may not know it, but the street road well water is hard water. The people in that area have been complaining for years, and the town said that they were gonna get softeners, then they're gonna pump it from there. I don't know how they're gonna do this. They're gonna, the way they're talking, they're gonna put a water line all the way down to the end of 74. And it's gotta be down deep enough so it doesn't freeze because of the amount of water moving, et cetera, et cetera. On top of that, another state law, they have to have fire hydrants every 500 feet. That increases the cost. This system is gonna need a pump to pump the water down. So, again, it increases the cost. For my, well, no, I don't know. Like I said, I wish I could, everybody I've talked to and they want definitive answers, the town keeps coming up with this iffy stuff. Going to the bridge. I talked to somebody that was at the meeting with Joe and the DOT about the dry hydrant. Joe, from what I understand, Joe is the town supervisor. He walked away from the meeting that the DOT said, no dry hydrant, none whatsoever. For those of you, a dry hydrant is nothing more than a pipe on the side of the road that goes into the lake. The fire truck pulls up to it. They can hook to that pipe and suck water out of the lake to feed the fire trucks to put the fire out, forest fire, whatever. It makes it a lot easier to get the water. The guy who was at the meeting said, that's not, DOT really doesn't want to do it. They haven't ruled it out. But DOT may be looking at, Department of Transportation, may be looking at, if this system goes through and they got a fire hydrant every 500 feet, why put in a dry hydrant? So I understand DOT's part, but I don't know if this system is going to go through because of the cost. The cost is roughly, with maintenance, $3,000 a year for 30 years.
Correct. If they get all the funding that they possibly could that was available 5 years ago, it could go down to about $1,600.
But even that,
But part two of that cost is that this Chilton Eagle Lake Water District will be a full paying member of the Town of Tide Water District. Joe said that. That's it's either 423 or 432, I forget the last. Those are the numbers, but I transpose them in my mind. It makes me a good accountant. That we would be paying, so the Town of Tide Water District would see a 4% reduction in their expenses to the benefit of our increased costs.
also, I think of it, if this goes through, they're going to put, we will be on meters. Every house will get, and if you're used to a meter, there's a basic sum. If you get to use so many gallons, anything over that costs you more. Like I said, we've been to almost every meeting, and I have yet to walk away with anything definitive. There's nothing you can really grasp. So the town wants us to make decisions on iffy information, but they haven't cleaned anything up. And I don't know if it's totally their fault or not. I have no idea, but, this has been a long time. So the only thing we can do as an association, most of you know, this is not an Eagle Lake property owner's issue. Our bylaws or mission statement is the lake. However, we believe that by getting involved, we can pass on as much information to you as possible so you can kind of make a good decision. They did rule out, they were talking about using Eagle Lake as a water source. However, they decided to rule that out because then they would have to take control of the dam. They would have to raise the lake in order to have sufficient water flow for drought. And as most of us know, if we raise the lake, we're going to raise it quite high, which would eliminate a lot of our property. So they've kind of gotten away from that. Like I said, I wish I could give you something that said this is a a good thing. The grant is still iffy. Dan Steck has promised he would do everything he could to get us as much money as possible, but when you talk to other people, grants have dried up, there's not that much money there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I found out yesterday, months ago, you had the option of staying in the district or getting out of the district. Yesterday, I was notified that you're in. That means I'm paying all this without even getting the water. The good flip-flop, like you were saying, with the government, don't give me a straight answer. The flop, every time you ask them a question, how much is it gonna cost me to get toilet water that I can't drink? I have a stream across the street that's overflowing, they won't let me tap into it to supply water on my property. Now, who's controlling? And I pay my taxes, do I have the right to get the water where I want it, or do I gotta go to Walmart to drink it? And they're controlling my end of this saying, no, you're in the district, you're gonna pay. And I think that's out. There's something wrong with this water problem. They're changing their numbers left and right. Now, I'm not gonna be caught at the other end of paying millions of dollars that I should have been refused on.
You, and don't get me wrong, he was there,
I'm
and
frustrated with it.
yes, you were there and asked for a letter, which they wanted you to send a letter to get out of the district. However, if you listen closely to that meeting, the town board stated, we're in charge. We don't have to accept you getting out of the district. Originally, and again, they said we could opt out. But then they turned around and corrected where I was wrong.
They sent out a survey, and they asked in the past, who wants to be in a well, who wants to be on the water district? That survey that was sent out in August, less than 50% of the people responded. So the conclusion they came to is, we don't have enough information. We have less than 50%. Of that, the majority of the people said, we're not sure. I think out of that, there were only, I forget the numbers, maybe 8 people out of 109 said they wanted to go to wells or other water source.
I saw higher than that. I heard almost 50%.
Over 50% didn't respond, and the majority of that 50%, I'm gonna say probably 60%, 70% of those people who did respond said they weren't sure what they wanted to do. And there's only about 8 people who said they were going to go away.
Well, that keeps changing, but the thing is, it's up to the town board, as they said, to allow you to stay in, so they can turn around and say, guess what, you're in. Even though you, and this is my personal thing, take it for what it is. I'm waiting to see, do I drill a well at whatever thousands of dollars it costs, or do I get water? Which one is the least expensive? Which one is going to, 30 years at $3,000 a year versus, I've heard a couple different prices for wells, anywhere from 8,000 to 20,000. Again, but if I'm going to drill a well and spend that kind of money, sure as heck I don't want to start paying the town for a water line that goes in front of my house. So that's where we are. I wish we had definitive, but again, when they send you the stuff.
But isn't there a way that we can get organized with 109 people or 150 that need the water to make a move to go after the town?
2 years ago,
50 of those 20 of us here saying, no, what are you gonna do?
2 years ago, I sent a letter to every user of the Gooseneck water system and asked, try to do that, and I got very little response. Raise one hand and you may have gotten some responses. Nobody wants to be involved, everybody's waiting for the town come up on its white horse to save the day. It's not gonna happen.
It'll be a report.
That's true. Let's just look into it.
They said at the meeting, Giordano, is that Joe, I was there. He said if they can't get the price of the whole thing down to $400 to $500 a person, it's not gonna happen. Through grants. So, it's, they realize that the people can't afford it. So the big number at the top, or let's say it's $9 million, the project, for 170 users. If they can't lower that to that, he said it's not gonna happen, because people can't afford it.
But again, too, why is the state of the town throwing it on to the property owners to pay for that bill? Either not liking my water, it's not my monthly bill, or it's put into my taxes, or redo the roads, or whatever.
You're a current user?
Yeah.
They took
And it
all
went
of
up 200% in the last 10 years. They're telling me it was a new district. And now I go down and said, oh, that's your new district. I say, what did they pay for 10 years ago? Now it's a new one again to get more money. But isn't it the state or the town's responsibility of getting that water in there? I mean, well, what do you pay your taxes on? Well, what's the water amount that, if I pay $400 a year to flush my toilet, is that normal?
There's a document that unfortunately is not available right now, because it's in the ELPI records of when they put some notes, the water line in back in the 20s and 30s. And I greatly appreciate your concern, and I think you ought to organize, I'm not part of the water, it doesn't affect me as much, but I did some research this spring. But just to go back, at some point, the town signed a sweetheart agreement with all the residents that were there, put a courtesy tap in, they've made money, they've done all kinds of things, and there's lots of, he did this, I did that, the whole 9 yards. As Steve Myers, who's been much more involved in it, knows, it's kind of a big mess as far as where it is at the moment. And it's not something that we can solve amongst the few of us that are here, but it does need to be a bigger group, as you mentioned. But I give you this as a quickie, that some research I did this spring. The document that is on the town's website, the 400-page plus document that was released in August or December or whenever it actually came out, talks about all the options. The first 30-some-odd pages talk about how they got to where they are. The next 10 pages gives you the scenarios that they want to present, and the last couple hundred pages gives you the geological background of how and what kind of terrain there is that they have to work in. But as I read through that, a couple things that came up was that all of a sudden it's going to have fire hydrants at 400 foot along the road. And I kind of asked myself, so where does this fire hydrant requirement come from? So I did a little digging. New York State does have a very specific document, some 700 pages plus of what you have to do for a municipal water system. And one of those is to put fire hydrants in, and they give you the spacing and the light. So that drives the price up. I think when I first heard this thing, and I hope that I'm kind of astute as to what's going on, not necessarily everything, but from what I remember about 5 years ago when they started presenting this thing about water, it sounded like, oh, we'll put a 2-inch water main in down to, the far end. A 2-inch water line is a cheap competition. The thing would be garden hose to supply a little bit of water. When you add fire hydrants into the mix, it real quickly drives the cost up, not only from the cost of an individual hydrant, and then you go, all right, how much water does a fire hydrant need to supply to a fire truck? Again, New York State's fire code for municipal water systems gives you that number, and it's 1,700 gallons a minute. Significant amount of water that you're not going to get through a garden hose. Out of curiosity of the person that I am, how big a pipe do we need to run to put 1,700 gallons a minute out? It winds up being an 8-inch pipe, so we're not talking a small piece of pipe going down 74. And then you start looking at the geology of Route 74 and the amount of water that may flow through that 8-inch pipe all the way from one end to the other, and wherever they put the pipe, and you have to bury the thing. Well, they're also talking about digging New York State Route 74. New York State Route 74 was put in back when horse and buggy, and they threw some gravel down, they threw some blacktop on it. It is what it is. The road needs repaving every year because it moves and shifts and everything else. Unfortunately, when you put a shovel in New York State, into a state highway, and you have to dig it up, you can't put it back with the burden that you took out. You have to put whatever New York State and whatever the federal government says into the road. So not only right now are you building a water system, but you're building a municipal water system that's going to be state-of-the-art. It has to be, because that's what New York State says. You're gonna rebuild Route 74 on the backs of 109 people, which, as I talked to Joe Giordano, because he called me one night at 8 o'clock at night, he goes, I need to present some information to you, to our board, can you allow me to send something out to your membership mailing? I said, whoa, wait a minute, let's talk about this thing. Spent a long time with him, because I've got a fairly decent relationship with him, and I said, this is what I hear from people, and this is what I read, and this is what I hear you telling them, and it's 3 different sets of information. So there's a lot of things going on. I sympathize with all of you that are on 74 that have to deal with this, because do you drill a well, don't you drill a well, in the district, out of the district? There are numerous people on 74 that already have a well, that they could care less what the water does. But if they're all of a sudden going to be charged, to be in the district because they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time on Route 74, they're going to have some things to say about it also. But just keep in the back of your mind as you're looking at this, it is a full-blown municipal water system. It has got an awful lot of expense to it. Route 74 being rebuilt is going to be an expensive proposition. Personally, I don't think it should be the burden of the residents of 74 to pay that, nor do I think fire protection should be something that you should be forced to pay for. I greatly appreciate it if I break down over there. When you look at back to the size of the water, the fire hydrant, 1,700 gallons a minute. Jack can speak to it better than I can, but if he pulls up to a fire scene when he was working with the fire department, he taps a hydrant, how long is he going to be on that hydrant, and how much water is he going to pull from it? When you start looking at, 1,700 gallons a minute, if you have an hour's worth of event that draws that amount of water, you're talking a significant pump in the ground or a significant amount of storage, all of which costs significant amounts of money. One of my proposals that I talked to the town supervisor about, and I was the one that kind of presented the dry hydrant thing for the causeway, because I was thinking about other things and going, they're already going to be digging up for the causeway, put a dry hydrant in there, be that what it is. But as I'm thinking here, there's an awful lot more money, having been dealing with invasives for the last 30 some odd years, for putting sewer systems in along lakes than there will ever be for putting municipal water systems in, which encourage development within the park. Nobody wants to encourage development in the park. It's not something that wants to happen. But nobody has said anything yet about possibly putting in a sewage treatment or a sewage collection line along 74 that might drive the cost down, or at least might bring up some more grant money. So there's a lot of things that need to be thought about, but it is going to be an individual or a group of individuals. I know Steve has tried to say, hey, let's get people together. It's kind of fallen on some deaf ears in places. It's fallen on lots of support in other places. But until you as residents, and I say this with all dear sincerity, because it doesn't affect me. If it did, I would be a whole lot more involved. But those of you that it affects have to get together, whether you're with the town or not with the town, but you have to come up with, in a sense, design a solution on your own. Where do you want to see it go? And then go to the town and say, here we have this as a possible thing for you to consider. So that's what I've learned over the last, 30 years of being a resident up here and listening to what's going on and talking to people. I wish I could be at the meetings again. It is what it is, and I wish you all the best. Not that I want to say in that respect.
You mentioned the water, the hydrants and stuff like that. Everybody along 74 has to be aware that if they put in the water district, it's going to be the property of those 109 properties. It's 107 point whatever EDU. It's not the property of any other house that happens to be along there that's not part of the district. If a property has a fire and they tap in to the water district, of which they're not a member of, the water district has every right to charge them back, 1 for the use, and 2 for all the water they have used. I don't know how much 17,000 gallons per 1,700 gallons per minute times an hour for the use comes out to as far as the cost. But that property owner could be completely responsible for that.
And that brings up a whole nother.
And I'm talking
Every time.
to Dorfman's, I'm talking to Ernie's, I'm talking to Davis.
That's the frustrating part.
You catches on fire, it's gonna burn to the ground.
Right.
Okay?
Even if I'm in the water district, by the time they get there,
If
it's
it's
gonna
a
burn to
year
the
bill for $500, I'll pay it. Or 2,000, I don't see no problem.
But it's
It's not a
reality.
scare tactic.
It's a reality check.
Who cares? My house burned down. Big deal.
Most of us know,
I
most of us know the insurance that we pay for our houses and cabins on this area, our insurance is high, because your insurance company is looking at it burning down to the ground. That's the reality. By the time somebody sees it, think about winter up here. By the time somebody drives by and sees it, they've got to drive all the way to Chilson Hill to get service, to call it in. Then they got to call these guys, and that's another. So by the time, all they're going to do is just put hoses out and protect what's around it, because it's burning down to the ground. That's the reality. So, and that's why what Steve said, I understand what you're talking about, but I'm telling them, keep the water in the truck, boys. I don't want it. My insurance, I'm paying the insurance for it. So that's just, again, every time we sit down with these people, you've done a lot of sitting more than I have. It's something else. So, like I said, we need to try to just keep getting the information out. I think it's a dog and pony show. They're putting on their show just to keep the feds and everybody else happy to say, see, we tried. That's what I think, but you can go.
The ultimate decision on this, as someone brought up, they say that it could go back to the potential user, but they have the ultimate decision, so they could decide, regardless of what we individually want. They can make that decision.
And that's the other.
They just have to sign a petition and say we don't want it.
Right, and that's the other.
We can tell them that, and they say, well, I'm not doing it.
No, yeah, they said their petition can go through and it won't go through.
Yes, it's, it's
The whole
a,
thing is designed to fail.
yes. All right, we'll move on, and, last thing, anybody got anything else on new business that we haven't touched on? Okay. Pardon?
For the first time since we've been up here, there's a loon nest
Oh.
that was in the south end of Foxtown. And last weekend, the baby hatched and I looked. So it's not. Here's a.
No, it's on the other end, the north side.
Yeah, that's the southeast end.
It's that north.
Oh,
My house is north.
okay. Anyhow, yeah, so, as of this morning, both the babies are still healthy.
Wanna go hiking there?
What do we have for next year?
How many fish did they get in the freezer?
For days, for weekends, anything you got? I don't have anything here. Well, the barbecue will be in August, I understand, so.
Generally, we want to get people, except for this year, to the meeting. Everybody is most likely to be at their camps on July 4th weekend, so, objections.
If you got, for next year's meeting, we're trying to set up our date so we can adjourn for the meeting. Usually it's around this time, for those of you who haven't had a chance to make it. I don't, let's see, what's the day? Saturday. So next year, July 4th will be on a Monday, which means we would probably be looking at July 2nd or Saturday next year. Does that sound? And right now, we usually try to work around the fire department, and they have moved their barbecue out to August, so they may keep it there. But we'll make a motion to have our next meeting July 2nd, 2022. And obviously, if anything gets in there, we'll let you know and change it, especially we're at the pleasure of the fire department to use this. we don't wanna be here for their, they would like us here for their barbecue, but it's hard to expect. Anybody have any issues with July 2nd next year? Pardon?
Rainy day to the 9th or the 3rd? It's covered, right?
I would say, I would shoot for that, I mean, this, here we are, and I would, but we, like I said, we'll shoot for the second, we'll let you know for sure, and I know we messed up this year, we forgot to tell you the date, we forgot to tell you the time. It's always 10 o'clock, and then next year, if we're very fortunate, we'll be able to have our normal picnic and enjoy each other's company after the meeting, and reminisce and tell stories, and, you know, just like the old days, isn't that so? So, July 2nd, 2022 is our next meeting. Like I said, get on the website, any information. Also, anything you come up with, you know, pass on to any board member so that, you know, we're kind of apprised of what's going on. So, you know, if you need information or you need help with something, I can use my hand to help if anybody wants to do it. So, anything else?
Thank you to Zach for serving.
Oh, Zach. Zach and Steve Phelps, what a pair. So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor? It was nice to see you all again. It's been a while.